And thanks for coming out to the latest in our Founder Spotlight series. This is pretty quickly becoming one of our favorite formats. I think to be able to get founders like Jack and Aneisha to come and give their honest stories and advice, I think being able to learn the realities directly from them is a massive win for all of us. So, of course, Jack and Aneisha from Scrumbles, I'll hand over to you to quickly introduce the business yourselves. What should people know if they don't know you?
Cool, hi guys, yeah, so I'm Jack, one half of the team. In case you don't know Scrumbles, we are a cat and dog food brand. About 10 years in the making now, 7 or 8 years trading. We sell across all the major supermarkets, places like Pets at Home, Amazon, mostly a UK business. We've got a small international business as well. We are the fastest growing pet food brand, a top 10 brand now at scale, and we'll do about 50 million in retail sales this year, and proudly one of the top 100 fastest growing Sunday Times.
For the third year running.
Very much. And this is quite fun because you guys were kind of really getting going just as we started the Founder Network. So you started coming to some of the events. I've just found out I've been saying Aneisha's name wrong for 5 or 6 years, which is always good. Been calling her Aneisha, so that's always a good start. But I suppose to kick us off, tell us about starting the business. Those first 6 months, you have this idea. How do you validate the idea to think this isn't just a good idea, but actually a viable business?
I look back at the first 6 months with fear. I used to wake up in the middle of the night with heart panic. So when you make that choice to start a business, you've got these ambitions and ideas of where you're going to get to, but then reality hits and you don't make the sales exactly how you wanted to. Jack and I used to go to cat and dog shows every single weekend. So we worked 7 days a week, selling to people. We had purchased data in advance to understand where the gap was in the market. Food was the obvious prize. That's where people spend their money. So no brainer, let's launch a food brand. We didn't have all the money in the world, so we started with dry food, which is what we fed our cat and dog. But when we got to those events, some of them could cost up to £1,000 a day to be there, and we would make £10 for one sale, because it's actually a really loyal category. To convince somebody to try Scrumbles was a really hard feat. So we quickly pivoted. We made low-cost dog treats which had a much lower barrier to purchase, so that we could sell to people who were happy, very promiscuous in the dog treats world. So they would buy those treats and we'd sell them the gut friendliness of Scrumbles. And that helped us to make the initial sales to justify going to events. We also spent a lot of time asking questions to really understand what their pain points were, which brands were they feeding, what were their likes and dislikes about those products, and how we could adapt Scrumbles to meet their needs better. Jack had a really funny way of getting us into Ocado's pet business, Fetch. I don't know who has pets here. But he effectively drove to the head office and sat down in the lobby and refused to go until the buyer said yes to listing us. So within the first 3 months, we launched into Fetch, and Jack and I have spent our career in FMCG, so we knew some of the playbook rules of the ops side of things, and we said we could only deal with full pallets, which was great. So our first sales to Fetch were full pallets of each product that we made. I think it was £60,000 that they didn't buy again for a year. That's how much stock we gave them up front.
We were doing, at the shows, you might do a couple of £100, so we had a monthly turnover of maybe a couple of £1,000, and then when we got our first order of 60 grand, they were like, we're rich, we made it. There was we could pay a few bills, and there was a lot of relief that month there. I was just thinking about, because James had some notes ahead about what we might talk about, and in that first 6 months, I think if we were just going off the sales data, they were looking at each other going, why is it not kicking on? Why are we not seeing that massive scale that we know is there? And really, I think it was just faith in, we could see this macro category data. We knew that gut health, gut health central to our brand. We knew how important it was. We knew people were turning on to gut health. But we just, it was just finding that angle to really cut through to people, which eventually came. And I think if we didn't have that
Think about those early days as well. So I love the hanging out in lobbies until someone turns up. But besides squatters' rights, what are some of the, I suppose, cheaper, quicker experiments that you did to make sure you had that product market fit?
I think leveraging micro-influencers. So there's a whole flufluencer community. Does everybody here have cats and dogs? Anybody? Yeah? So there are lots of famous cats and doggies with much higher followings than ourselves. And we embedded ourselves in that community. So they would try our products for free. And that was a small investment from our side. And we got them to advocate the product and share their verdict with their community. So that was a really low cost way for us to leverage the kind of success.
The shows are important for us. It's very analog, you know. We're all looking at like D2C KPIs and what's your LTV and your CAC, and we were actually stood in fields or sports halls speaking to people about their pet, their needs. Learn a huge amount from your customers, speaking to them directly, and then what we built was a small but really loyal group of customers, and they would repeat, you know. And in the first couple of years, we were packing all those D2C orders as well. And, you know, shout out to Trev, our sort of first big loyal customer that
he's still with us today. Yeah.
But you'd see those names, you go, well, that's definitely working for them, and they're repeating. And I guess the micro-influencer is a version of this, but in our category, recommendation is so important. You know, we can wax lyrical about how good our product is all day long, but we're always going to do that because it's our product. But if you speak to somebody about our found's product that's had a tangible impact on my dog's health or my cat's well-being, that's so much more powerful. So although it felt really hard work, hammering those events and just speaking to individuals, that did have a knock-on and a sort of network effect after time.
And what then, you've kind of alluded to it, but what were the key metrics to look out for at that point? So you mentioned the LTV and recommendations and I guess on-the-day sales at these events and what have you, but what were the ones that made you think, right, this is what we need to track? Yeah, we're going in the right direction.
So in the early days, LTV and CAC weren't as meaningful for pet because your frequency can be every 12 weeks, so 6 months just isn't enough time. But within Ocado, we would look at the quartile rankings, so we got all of the competitor cells and we could see new customer growth, whether we were attracting more customers than other brands, how quickly we were climbing up those rankings, and then also repeat rate, so the loyalty for their customers there.
Perfect. And I've seen a bit about the trials that you also ran in the early days. So tell me a bit about them and what's important in that, given metrics, sample size. What do you look for I guess, advice if others are running trials?
Yeah, I mean, just feeds those people didn't your breakfast. Because we've got health, we spend far too much time thinking and looking and talking about what comes out the other end. But we used what we had. Basically, we didn't have access to great big panels, so we used our network. So our pets, our friends' pets, our family's pets. Things that are important to us are taste. Taste is absolutely king. There's no point making a product if a cat or dog's not going to eat it. And it always blows my mind. I speak to food and drink founders where you go, oh, I just realised how important taste is. And you think, well, it's absolutely fundamental to you. You've got to get that right first. And then, what we've been focused on, what we've been trying to achieve is improving health through better digestion. So I remember speaking to private equity firm one time, and they were saying, "Oh, gut health's a little niche, isn't it?" And my jab back was, "Well, 100% of cats and dogs have guts, so it does apply to all, and it is coming through as a really, really important trend, both in human food and pet food."
And we've seen all of our peers start to emulate our gut health language now. So everyone's talking about those prissy poos, putting gut health in front of pack. They say, what was it?
Fermentation
is the best form of. I'm really bad with sayings, but yeah.
And I guess that takes us on to the next thing. So obviously we've touched on the metrics, we've touched on the taste of the food, but obviously you're a business as well, so the price. But how do you balance those three, especially if they conflict at any point?
Price is really important to us. We both work within pet, sort of different ends of the spectrum on the price position, and we wanted to make a product that was absolutely fantastic from a nutritional perspective, but we didn't want to make it for a really niche market. We wanted it to be accessible for as many people, partly just a principle thing. I've worked in a place before where I felt there'd been a bit elitist about it, and just culturally that didn't resonate with me. But also, the size of the prize. If you make a product that's, 3 times the normal average unit price or price per kilo, you're going to speak to a much, much smaller audience, and therefore the size of business and size of operation you can create is going to be smaller. So, every brand and business has their own model, but we always try to find that sweet spot of affordability. So, the way we achieve that is, gut health at the centre of what we do. We knew how we achieve that. There's some fantastic functional ingredients, which is live probiotics and prebiotics. But we took a really simple approach to the recipe. So if you look at some pet foods out there, they have a recipe list as long as your arm, and they have the milk thistle and the nettle and things. And we just looked at, but what does this do for our pet's health? If it adds incremental value, it's important to be there. If it seems like it might be a bit of a marketing spin, we don't need it, we'll take it out. And that allowed us to be much more competitive. And so we talked to our retailers. We play a trade-up position. We're next to mass brands on the shelf, say a Purina 1, and so we can bring them up in the pricing ladder, which is great for a retailer. But we're not right at the top end, so we can reach a larger audience than similar as more expensive products.
And that's really helped in the cost of living crisis. People started to reappraise their spend, and we've supported the retailers by insulating them from people trading all the way down. So often they've had to rationalise the range, and they've got rid of those super premium brands because they know people can't spend the money there, and we've allowed them to continue to trade people up.
So pretty early on in the Scrumbles' lifetime, you appeared on Dragon's Den and famously turned down an offer. Walk us through rationally why you would turn that down, and whether you still have the same sort of mind frame now when speaking to investors generally.
How many people have been on Dragon's Den here? I know we were talking about it earlier.
It was a really funny experience. We had just raised some money, or we'd had a raise ready to go. I think the paperwork hadn't been done, but it was essentially in place before we went onto Dragon's Den. So we went on going, look, this is going to be a fantastic PR opportunity. If the money comes along, that's great. But actually what we want to do is just, show the brand, build some rapport with the Dragons, have a lovely time, get that hug and kiss at the end with Deborah, whatever it might be. So we're like, whatever they do, we'll say yes. We'll definitely say yes, won't we? And we went on, we did our pitch. Peter was horrible to us, isn't he? He gave us a real grilling. If you haven't seen ours, it's
quite
very
cringeworthy.
Episode, yeah. You have to remember Dragon's Den is for entertainment, which might have been lost on us at the time. So they're trying to craft a story, and I set us up for a bit of a stinker. But basically, what happened is Deborah made us an offer. They wanted to fund a massive percentage for a relatively small amount of money. So economically, it wasn't a very clever thing to do. But we had said to her yes. And we said, let's go to the wall. We had a little chat. Should we do the offer? Shall we not? We thought, well, we'll be clever. We'll give a counter offer so we can earn some of that equity back. And we went and delivered that.
We didn't anticipate that she might say no, and we didn't agree what we were going to do, but we had agreed before the show, no matter what, we would say yes to the deal and say no off camera.
So we're perfectly in tune and everything.
Of course.
We're husband and wife, was always co-founders. So I was looking at you, like, I think I know what you're thinking. And we obviously didn't, because I went, well, on that basis, Deborah, no, thanks very much. And the
shock on my face.
On camera, isn't it? And Aisha's like, what the hell? And then in the lift. And so the whole episode, I mean, because Peter was a bit naughty. I think he was like, "Well, what happens if you guys get divorced?" And he's really doubling down.
They do the editing really well, because in the actual filming, he said, "What happens if you get divorced?" And I said, "Well, that's silly. Any co-founder can break up." But in the actual TV edit, they do, "What happens if you guys get divorced?" I say, "That'll never happen." They pan to Jack and he's sweating from the lights. It's just...
What happened to Benny? But actually, although it was a little bit...
It works really well for us.
Yeah, because we got a load of coverage.
So we weren't actually meant to be on the series until later on, and we got a call from the BBC saying, "Oh, we're actually going to put you on the first episode," and we knew then that something was wrong with the edit.
Yeah.
And a journalist called Jack the day before to ask if we were still married, and we were watching the episode and we were like, "Oh my God, we're still not there. We don't want to be the last one on the cameras, because that's the one." Yeah. And we were the last one, so it was the longest bit, and then all the newspapers covered us to say, are they still together? Couple divorce after, husband turns down deal. Yeah. And the next day we were getting the tube to work with our doggy, and a guy turned around and said, "Great show last night."
Amazing. So I guess just to bring this back down to earth a little bit and make it more practical for everyone in the room. So obviously you got a bit of a PR spike there.
Yeah.
Obviously a big one. How do you handle that? And I'm thinking for people in the room, whether it's just a mention in a newspaper or doing well at Coach and something again. If you have that sudden spike, looking back, what did you do well? What would you have done differently?
Well, so firstly, we sell on Amazon. Amazon's very much a search platform. It's really hard to be discovered as a new brand. You can advertise as much as possible, but people won't convert. So when we went on to Dragon's Den, we got a 20x uplift from Dragon's Den feature, and then that immediately put us on the map, and it helped the algorithm. And what we did was we capitalised on as much journalist exposure as possible. So we contacted all the podcasts to give them the behind the scenes expose truth of what's it like to be on Dragon's Den. Every time Dragon's Den comes onto the TV, we still contact journalists and we say, a year from now, a year on, where are they? Or 5 years on, where are they? And they like those stories. It gives us more exposure. We always put some of the cheeky, cringeworthy clips in our on our social media, and people who haven't seen it before then go and see it. They fall in love with the brand, and they become advocates for us.
The thing is, in terms of preparation, we got caught out basically because we were told we'd be on air in December, and then we got a few days' notice that was actually in August. So we really struggled because we wanted to do the extra bandwidth. We wanted to be able to host all those people on the website, and basically the website crashed, didn't it? We went out of stock. So, knowing ahead, preparing ahead, making sure you've got a capacity, whether that's stock, whether that's ability to host on the website. Obviously, you've got to get those building blocks in place. Clearly, it doesn't always go to plan, and if it does, that's okay. There's still opportunities to capitalise that, and I guess we're still milking it today. So
good. And let's talk a bit more about strategy. So it seems like, from an outsider's point of view, you really focused on retail rather than D2C, and it seems like you've doubled down on that a little bit. So, one, is that right in saying? But two, whether it's right or not, what are the things that dictate where you spend your resources, time, in terms of margin and everything else?
I think it's similar to the learnings at the dog show. We learned that strength and breadth was really important. So we have that broad range across cats and dogs, across wet, dry and treats. From a channel perspective, we wanted to be omni-channel. So when we launched D2C was sexy, that's where all the investment money was going, but it didn't feel right for us to put all of our eggs in that one basket. So we do have a thriving D2C business. It's one of our fastest growing channels, but equally we have the brick and mortar stores to balance them one against one another.
Yeah. I think there's nuances to each business. With our products big and bulky, so I think people tend to assume that D2C is really high margin. That's not necessarily the case when you've got to send 12 kilos of stuff through the post. There's a piece there around margin mix. But the other thing is around your customer. Where is your customer? Our customer likes the convenience of online, but they run out and they want to go to the co-op and pick up a bag, and that can be an acquisition moment. And some people are in that religious 1 week. I go to Sainsbury's every week and I visit the pet hour because I'm there for my groceries. So we wanted to be where our customers were, and that naturally led us to be omni-channel.
And it's the marketing exposure you get being on the shelves. That's ongoing marketing that you're not paying for. So really important to work with those retailers.
Yeah, it still stuck with me, and this was 5 or 6 years ago. The breakfast, and I can't remember, one of you came, actually you came to, I think, with Kevin Brennan. So he was CEO of Corn at the time. And it's always stuck with me to this day, him talking about how you have to not just be top of mind at all times, but available at all times. So I guess that covers that
Exactly.
omni-channel piece.
We're going to be seen to be bought.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. So tell us about the wholesale packaging side in terms of how you handle, again, I want to dive into like the margins when you're in retail and what have you. How does the model differ, and what people need to look out for if they're looking to really ramp up their retail?
I think you have to think about what's in it for your retail, what's in it for your customer, why they're going to put it on the shelf. It'll massively depend on the category that you operate in and the type of product and the price point around the margin that they need. Traditionally, the model will be, if you've got a slower selling item, you've got a higher premium for an item, they'll want more margin too. There should be more margin in that product, so there's that sort of natural scale. If you've got something that's low cost and sells fast, then you can probably get away with a bit less margin. Scale helps, and clearly when you're starting up, you don't have that scale, but look ahead to where you can be and how much of a bet can you make. I think we've probably been guilty in the past of undercalling how big things can be, right? And perhaps leaving some on the table where we go, okay, we're going to do 100,000 of this item this year, and actually we end up doing 200,000, and you have to come back around, but use that.
And I think from a pricing perspective, it's so easy when you start to just give them what they want, but that's a short-term gain. You've got to think about the long term. We had competitors who gave a lot of margin, got a whole shelf versus our like 1 or 2 SKUs on the shelves, but they didn't have the money to then invest into marketing. So very quickly, a year down the line, their space started getting cold, whereas our space started to grow. If you don't know your category margins, you can obsess over Companies House and look at other bigger brands. Anybody that's bigger than 10 mil has to publish their P&L. Yeah. So you'll see their gross margin. You can work backwards to know exactly what kind of rough ballpark the retailers will accept.
Might just say as well, I'm a bit of a classic salesman, and she keeps me in check a lot. I'm always out going, okay, we'll do that. Okay, they want a little bit more margin or whatever it might be, and I tend to lean in and want to get the deal done. And Aneisha will catch me out, but the mistake I've definitely made is sort of unit economics might be okay, but I might have overlooked things like payment terms and stuff like that. And we've been in a position before where people take bloody ages to pay you, and that really gets you in the long term. So margin's obviously important, and usually that's fairly obvious because you can cash it up straight away. But don't overlook those other funkers as well.
And payment terms, is that something you've negotiated? And I guess for those just looking to get into retail, how much can you push on that?
You can push it a lot more than you realise, and both sides. So in terms of paying our suppliers, we built really good relationships with our suppliers. I think I was a little bit too cheeky with our packaging supplier, but I asked him if I could have extended payment terms to pay. He gave me 3 months, I took a year. And you've got to really play with your cash flow as much as possible in the early days. With the retailers, they will try to put you on a long payment term, and they think that, they'll say that they can't move on there. That's a lie. It's always a lie. So we have always started a lower payment term to get paid than we have to pay our suppliers.
The bigger retailers are better than they used to be. They all used to be like a brick wall, and the Tesco's and Sainsbury's of this world have sort of recognised that it probably doesn't suit them in the long term if they are making it too difficult for small suppliers, because they miss out on innovation and the cool stuff. So they often have schemes, or you can access ways where they might give you better payment terms. You just got to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Right. I want to dive a bit into raising investment, which obviously affects a lot. Just out of interest, how many people here are currently raising or will be in the next 6 months? Okay, right. Let's really dig into it. So my understanding is you turned down a fair few offers in the earlier days to then accept a bigger offer. So what changed with that last offer? What was different? What were you looking for?
We've we've done a few funding rounds, 2 or 3 smaller ones. So when we first came to market, I think we, great big healthy dose of ignorance around how much it was going to cost us to run the business and to get started. Begged, borrowed, and stole everything we could from, let's see, your mum.
Yeah.
To be honest, but that didn't get us very far. And so we raised through EIS first, and we just went to our network, and it was 100, 150.
SEIS, yeah, and then EIS.
SEIS. And that was just leveraging network, and that was enough to get us off the ground. As we were building scale, we again look at payment terms, use payment terms as much as possible to keep liquid. But we felt that it was probably going to become the time to raise investment. I think the trigger for us was the Ukraine war, all this big inflation that was coming through. We'd seen our whole competitive set had taken money, and we thought we might be left behind here. So we probably came at it a slightly different animal through most. It was more around, let's make sure we've got cash in the coffers to see us through if this really doesn't go right over the next year or so. And we felt that we found a sort of sweet spot in time around valuations are still relatively good, and whilst we were facing a lot of these headwinds, I think in the end we found a partner that we felt was the right partner at the time.
And if there's gaps in your knowledge, like international, find people that have scaled internationally and have a coffee with them. You won't get that advice from a PE or a VC.
And it's BGF.
BGF's our partner, so they're relatively easy to work with. I think we'd never raised money to that scale before, so going through the term sheet, again, healthy dose of naivety, we were focused on that top line valuation. Rather than the longer term clauses, and that would be my advice, look at where they have consent rights, because the valuation, even if you reduce that by £500,000, that's not going to have that big an impact on you as those longer term kind of thresholds where you need to get their consents. And at this stage of business where you're raising, some of those thresholds seem reasonable and high, but they tend to not be. So always put those a lot higher, and then your own salaries, right? As founders, we've invested so much of our time and energy into building a business. Once you do take PE and VC money, they will take kind of full control over your package. So you've got to make sure that you negotiate those levels and kind of thresholds in advance.
And take us, I suppose, back a step. So you're going out for a new funding round. What's your strategy? And I guess when you're coming up with a list of people to reach out to and people to have conversations with, what's the criteria at that point?
Well, you've got to like them. So we're not raising at the moment. We're looking at advisors to talk to, and we've spoken to a lot of advisors. And my kind of rule is, would I go to the pub with them? Because you're going to spend a lot of time with these people. So if they're normal, nice people, and everyone's got their own definition of normal, that's who you want to spend time with. I think relationships really matter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously the hard skills and the hard facts have to be there, but once you're down to pool of people that are can do the job for you, that's got to be the ticket.
Perfect. We'll do just another 10 minutes or so, and then happy to open it up to the floor to take the conversation wherever you'd like. One other thing I really want to dive into here is you've scaled pretty quickly in the recent years. What was the single biggest bottleneck in that, and what would you do differently to remove that bottleneck if you were to do it again?
I think I was thinking about this on the way in, and it's hard to pinpoint a single thing that was, from a supply chain or an operation perspective that really got stuck. I think there's a few moments where, as we co-pack, we've got manufacturing partners. There's been points in time where we've sort of outgrown a manufacturer, and that's quite difficult because we tend to have really strong relationships with people, with other business owners, and we can be a big part of their business. And so I think the hardest thing is when you sort of know that you're reaching a point where, okay, they're not consistently delivering the quality of product that you need, or they're not consistently delivering stuff on time, and they're not making enough stuff. You got to recognize that and start protecting your business from it. And then, some point along the line, you've got to have a difficult conversation. And we've had to have a couple of those, and they're never easy, but you've got to look at what's important for your business. Do you have the capacity to grow further with this partner? And if not, how do you build in contingency or protect for growth?
Yeah. And on that point, having a contingent supplier from day dot is really important. So when we launched, we put all of our eggs into this one manufacturer who really, they put through a 30% CPI after a year, which was ridiculous.
What about more, I don't know if it's front of the house or back of house, but in the office, what were some of the more bottlenecks in terms of processes and...
We've packed a lot of boxes, haven't we? We've packed a lot of boxes.
We used to treat my mum to a free lunch if she could hit the threshold of orders per hour. So
I remember this won't be very helpful, but you might be able to relate to these sort of mishaps. We've got Tash, who's one of our first hires. She's fantastic. Been with us for 6 or 7 years now. And she mostly looks after the website. And she'd created this, this is in the early days, we were hand packing samples. We decanting from our large bags of dry food into these single packs, about 30, 40 grams of food for people to buy, to get for free. And we'd send them through the post. It was obviously a loss leader. And we were making them in the office. And on the website, you get, I don't know, a dozen a day, a couple of dozen. And she said, well, I found a platform to sort of amplify this. And sort of went off, didn't really tell us about it. And we came in the next day and we had 8,000 orders for these 30-gram samples that we probably had about 50 made up. So over the next 3 or 4 days, we were hand packing these little samples and dragging everyone into making them. And the worst bit about it, because it was bloody painful work, because he'd done it on this voucher code website, it was like a really low value. Everyone was getting stuff for free. They didn't really care about it at all. So the conversion was
terrible.
We got 3 customers out of it or something for more than it's worth.
Effort versus return, yeah.
Because if you give them stuff away for free, people would just speculatively get it, even if they're not interested.
Maybe if they never pay.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm still carrying the scars for that. I've forgotten the original question.
Oh, I was just saying, it's not so.
That was more interesting.
It's not so much a bottleneck, but people. I think in the early days when you're doing everything, you dream of having a team and having people that can alleviate some of the pressure. We saw some of our peers raise money early and just spend a lot of cash on a big team. We didn't do it that way, and we still kind of live by FTE per, the revenue per FTE, and we have a lean team. So some of our peers are a tenth of the size of us, but they have a team that's 4 times the size. I don't think you should hire fast. I think you should build your team really slowly and get people that are embedded, really passionate about the business. Tash is my go-to. She still works for us. I know I'm going to know her for the rest of my life. Renee's the same, and they care about the business. We can go on holiday now knowing that they will look after everything, and they are our experts across the business as well. So take your time hiring people, because people are the biggest challenge, I would say.
How do you find you're hiring at the minute? I saw in the marketing team, right? How do you go about that? How do you find the right people?
I don't think we haven't cracked the code, have we? We still we tried recruiters. Not I don't think that's really worked for us.
No.
I think the best hires that we've had have been still that network hires, that maybe one person removed. We do use a lot of LinkedIn.
We bring the team into the process as well, because culture is so important. So I always do the first stage interview, just kind of getting to know who the individual is, a little bit about their background. And then second stage, they come into the office, they have a face-to-face chat with a couple of the team members, and then we'll give them a case study to give them some pressure and see how they perform. With ChatGPT, we always do an on-the-day task, because you have no idea whether they've just chucked it through ChatGPT, and that's a really good way to see how they deal with on-the-day pressure and actually how they perform within a short period of time.
one of my best, worst interviews. Aneisha and I were interviewing a guy, and he had great big thick glasses on, and what he didn't know is we could basically see the reflection of us in his glasses, so we could see his screen of his glasses. And as we were asking him questions, we could see him typing away. There's the before ChatGPT, but we were like, so, you know, why Scrumbles? What was it that attracted you to about the brand? And he's on the About Us page, and he's sort of reading verbatim back to us. You could see him scrolling up and down. So.
We always ask, do you have pets? Because we're a pet company. And he said, I'd prefer not to answer that. And that really
that was a special interview, that. So, yeah. Anyway, he got the job.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Last thing I want to touch on, and Aneisha, I think this is more you. I think you're slightly more vocal on it, is the B Corp situation. So, and just to give everyone context, for a number of years you were B Corp.
Yeah, so we became the second pet food brand globally to certify as a B Corp. We're both passionate about sustainability, environmentally and socially, and we're still 1% for the Planet members. So with every sale, 1% of sales gets donated. We actually get our teams choose their charities, our retailers choose their charities as well, which is a really nice way to make everyone feel part of the journey. But why we joined B Corp and what it evolved to be didn't really align with my values. It felt quite greenwashing, and that's not to say that there aren't brilliant businesses in B Corp, and I think fundamentally what it stands for is right, but how it goes about it isn't necessarily something I agree with. So I'd felt like this for a little while and spoke to the marketers first, asked them what they thought of B Corp, and they all felt similar to me. So we first surveyed our customers and sent them a longer kind of survey, but to understand whether they understood what B Corp was, what was it that they were passionate about, and what would their thoughts be if we were to move away from it. That helped us kind of firm up that they were also aligned with us. So we had to take it to board. It was one of the consent rights. So we presented it to BGF and said, look, it's not something that we align with. Our customers equally feel similarly, and it's not going to have a negative impact if we move away. We chose to post on LinkedIn. Like with everything, we share our journey with our customers. And I probably get maybe 100 likes for a post that I'll put on LinkedIn, maybe 5 comments, normally just from the team and my mum. And I posted, and within a few hours, we'd had over 1 million intensive impressions, and there's 400 comments, and it sparked a huge argument between a lot of businesses that felt like we did and didn't really align with what B Corp stood for or how it performed, and other businesses that were really devout B Corpers. It got us a lot of exposure. So I was on the Radio Times. I was interviewed by the Times and a few other journalists as well. And just at this moment that we'd chosen to step away, and there's a big brand, Dr. Bronner's in America, they also chosen to step away, and they're one of the founder members of B Corp. So, you know, I think whatever you need to do, it should align with your personal values. And if anybody is exploring B Corp, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to do, but it just wasn't right for us. So we still make conscious decisions about our packaging materials. We're still really focused on volunteering days and donating money, but we didn't feel the need to do it given that B Corp aligned better with our team.
Oh,